YouTube. Chrono and I back here with another video. And for today, we're going to talk about the Galaxy Madness deck tier list. All right. So, as you guys may or may not know, right now we have a huge tournament going on right now, which is called the Galaxy Madness Redux. Maybe Redux is probably the better way to say it. But as you can see, we have 26 players. And not sure if this is completely record breaking or not in a single elimination format. Not going to scroll down to spoil some of the results or anything like that. But this is a crazy tournament. The creator of the game, Zach himself, is actually in the tournament, and we have some people old and new who have jumped in to test their chops in their different decks and see who can come out as the winner on top. The cool prize with this particular tournament is that the winner gets their deck printed out in a physical form. So you get the IRL cards of your whole deck, whatever that whole deck list is, and you get it sent back to you. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to kind of update my thoughts on the format, especially with this being a best of one format, and kind of just showing what I think the best decks are for this particular type of tournament. Let's go ahead and talk about the tiers. Obviously, tier one is going to be the decks that I believe are leading the pack right now are the best options to pick. Um, Tier two, obviously falling a little bit behind that, and then tier three, and then not a good idea, which is some of those decks where I think like you just have better options, or I think the deck still needs to be figured out by people who are very passionate about that particular planet type. What I also want to talk about too is that this tier list is a little bit different from normal, as there's some specific criteria that I want to give as an outline. So one of the metrics is how easy the deck is to pilot. So if I were to give it to the average player, how likely are they to perform and use the deck properly? I think that does play a huge part. Next will be consistency. So, for example, how effectively is the deck able to draw, get to a clear win con, and have tools for various matchups? So, we're talking about a best of one tournament here. And so, how equipped is the deck to kind of handle, every different type of play style and have the tools to adapt? And if you have a skilled player, they have the opportunity to, show some skill expression and to get the job done. And then last criteria is just straight up like power level. I think with the format being a little bit slower, you definitely have to have really good, consistent damage output. And I think that's a good criteria to use when determining how these decks are going to be listed. Let's go ahead and jump right in. First deck I want to talk about here is the Army of Justice deck, which I have the combiner being the uh, planet image here. For those who don't know, this deck really focuses on using a good balance of Barrow, Syndian, and Gaios creatures in order to form like a consistent engine. You have the smaller Ozos, which is the Ozo Kai, Ozo Bam, and Ozo Block. You also have some space to squeeze in the big Ozo, which is one of the best forms of creature removal. Can be very consistent as the combiner allows you to search for one of these three planet types. And if you're able to squeeze in a fourth engine, which I think makes the deck increase in power a little bit, but also could be, throw off some consistency here and there, whatever the case may be, then you're able to use Soulstrom. And if you guys remember from the ban list, Soulstrom is here at one copy as it is half banned. So instead of two copies, you can run one in your deck. But going back into it, I think the deck is either bottom of tier one or top of tier two. So what I'll do is I'll just drop it here at tier two, and we can reshuffle some things as we get more decks added onto the list. However, I think this is one of the easiest decks to pilot. I think if I give this to someone, I think they're able to figure it out. Like, oh, okay, one of these Ozos gets the other Ozo planet type, and then I want to collect those into my hand and then use the big Ozo to start breaking through. And I can also use the combiner for some damage as well. And I think it's pretty much like power through and get to a clear win con that way. But as I list more decks, we'll kind of organize from there. Next up is Shias. Now, Shias took a really big hit here. What you may be thinking, looking at this particular screenshot, is that, hey, I think Shias is in a good position with these three cards being unbanned. But as of, I believe, July 25th, at the time of this recording, The Undying Blue Flame Tower was completely banned, and so that shifted all the way over here to the band section. And I think that that was a really big hit towards the power level of Shias, as the Blue Flame engine, even without Jakra, Laji plus Scarl was able to give a lot of burn damage and a lot of pressure. And combined with the offerings of EOS, there was a lot of consistency there to get everything set up. As you can see from those three different cards, everything was searchable. Laji was able to search the tower. Offerings of Eos was able to kill Scarl, and then now you can use the tower to bring Scarl back, and then now you have consistent two creature boards. And regardless of if you're killing things or not, or hitting for face, you're getting a point for each Scarl on your field. And you have two towers at that point in time. And so you're able to kind of get even more burn damage from that. But yeah, I think the field of players kind of felt like that might have been a little bit too strong. So the powers that be remove the tower, and with that, I believe that pushes the deck down to tier two. It's going to be interesting when I start adding other things as I'll reorganize. But I think the new approach to the deck is pretty much like foot on the gas, complete aggro. The powerful thing about this deck that I really like is that you're still able to run things like Firewall and Crimson Grenade. And depending on the build, you probably can get away with a four, either definitely a two activator package. But if you just really wanted to, you know, go full Shias, you could really run all four of those. So two grenade and two firewall, and against certain decks that could be very oppressive. I think the deck is, in terms of being able to pilot it, has kind of become a little bit more challenging, because I don't think the deck has a really good late game anymore. And so if you're not getting really good damage in the early game and cracking through in the middle game to finish things off, the deck starts to kind of drop off in power level and consistency there, as you're trying to get to that win con, and that could be a problem. And with the format in general, just kind of slowing down, it just makes it even more harder. Next up is Bugonk. I'm going to put Bugonk in not a good idea. Um, and the reason I'm saying this is because you have Blaze Elixir cut to one copy here as it's half banned. But also, I think decks are more prepared for things like this. Um, Even though the format is slower, I don't think you're able to really stall out as long as you think you are in order to get one copy of Bugonk, one copy of the Starship, one copy of Blaze Elixir. And then, even still, if you're able to pull that off, I mean, that's only going to get you 8 points of damage for one potential swing. And then assuming people have a board of creatures, you either have to blow through that board of creatures, or if you bypass it with Bugonk, you're only going to get 8 points of damage, and you're also still potentially playing into Beast of the Black Hole. So I think the strategy itself is just not as reliable as it used to be. Can it get you some sneaky damage in other decks? I think so, but as a pure strategy like it used to be, I don't think it's just a good idea. Next up, we have Bugs. Burrow Bugs is actually in tier two. I would put them. I can't quite put them above Shias, even though Shias took a really big hit. I think Shias is still a powerful deck and a deck to be reckoned with. And in the right hands, it could definitely still just blow you over. If you ever break against Shias and they just come out the gate with a good hand, things could spiral out of control. As far as Burrow Bugs, I think there's still really good power level there. I think they have some of the best resource removal cards in the form of Desert Quake, where you're able to kill two of your Burrow Bugs to kill up to two creatures on the field. The cool thing about that is that your Burrow Bugs that you sacrifice from your hand often give you some form of advantage, whether that's Pluga, which is going to revive a barrel creature, or Batterer, which is going to give you a +1 draw. And some decks even run the Garita. I believe that's how you pronounce that, where Garita is going to bounce a card back. Um, and so, there's still some opportunities for some interesting plays there, where if maybe you don't want to destroy both creatures, you want to destroy one and bounce another one. That could also be a cool play. And then Queen itself is still pretty strong with Blaze coming back. With Blaze Elixir coming back, at least at one copy, you have some opportunities to just set up and get 8 points of damage. What's also cool about the deck too is that Barrow in general just runs a lot of high health stuff, and so you can really wall stuff and just build up resources and that can kind of spiral and be oppressive. What I do not like about the deck is that when you brick on burrow bugs, you brick very, very hard. Like if you have some bugs in your hand and you don't have a way to like, mill them, or use them in a in an effective way, and if you have to like start cosplaying them just to like protect yourself from direct damage, then it gets really, really bad, and it can throw off the entire game plan of the deck. Where most of the time your main option of doing that is the queen. So the queen is not only like the starter, but it's also the extender of the deck, and I think that's a lot of pressure to put just on one type of strategy. um, so in general, the bugs might be better off as an engine, but as a pure deck, it is definitely still a force to be reckoned with. Next up, I have Diabacadra. Diabacadra, I'm actually gonna put in. This is a tough one. I'll put it in the top of tier three. The reason that's the case is I think decks are just way, way more prepared for this. And with Crozen being cut to one copy, the deck has lost a lot of consistency. The game plan is you want to have a bunch of smaller two-star creatures. You either trade them through battle or through, the Polysium ability to get your bigger guys out. And then you slam down a Diabacadra with an extremely high health that can really just like be oppressive to certain decks. Uh, the thing is, it's not as consistent, and I think decks are way more equipped to remove Diabacadra in a unique way. You still do have the two Leviathan crowns, which can definitely be a problem. Um, but I think decks are running enough removal now where two crowns is not going to cover all of your issues. And similar to the Burrow Bugs strategy, if you brick on this, it could be really, really bad. Like you could just have a hand of like either all your big guys or all the small guys, and then you're kind of awkward because it's like, well, do I just let my opponent get a bunch of face damage on me and then wait till I draw a big guy to play down? Or do I just, play a big guy and then now I don't have any killed small guys, so Diabacadra isn't really useful? And so, yeah, it's just kind of weird. And I don't know if it's necessarily a reliable strategy. And I think to get the full power out of this deck, too, you have to run the Sacred Reef, if I'm not mistaken, the Sacred Reef permanent resource. And if you're doing that, you're blocking one of your resource zones. And this just is requiring a lot of setup. Like, yes, it powers up your two-star creatures. And when you get it set up, it can be nice, but you're banking on doing that. And we're talking about in a tournament format of multiple rounds. Um, a break could just mean an auto lose, really. So I don't think it's that consistent. Next up, we have this represents Roka mid range. So basically, a pure Roka deck. You have the Dust Rogs thrown in there. Maybe you have some Scardians and things of that nature. I think this deck still hits really, really hard. The only issue for me, and I will put it above Diabacadra. I mean, I feel like they're kind of interchangeable, but this deck definitely is more consistent because at least once you get one Scardian set up, you have the Scardian loop, and that can buy you a lot of time. The issue is that a lot of decks are already built to respect Guardians, and so once the Guardians are gone, a lot of the backbone of the deck kind of falls apart. And if you're not maintaining your Roka creatures on the field, then you're not getting the reveals from the planet, which means you're not really getting the most value out of the creatures that benefit from when they reveal a certain planet type. I'm sorry, a certain card type. And then next thing you know, you're just like, oh my gosh. And then another thing too is the smaller end of creatures kind of work in a stally strategy. So you have like FaceTime, Carlo Claw, um, Guster, things that kind of slow down the game. But I don't know if the game is slowed down enough. And each of those is 4 stars. And as of my knowledge, the deck doesn't have a really good way of like managing the star economy. And so you could kind of like shoot yourself in the foot. Like, I'm playing my creatures, and if my opponent's able to blow through them a little bit faster than I expected, now I'm just down on stars, and I'm trying to like play them from the back foot. And I also think that this deck is not the easiest to pilot. Like it seems kind of straightforward, but if you miss a Scardian interaction and you draw the other one, then that's kind of awkward. If you don't set up the right 4 star creature to hold the board, that's also awkward. If you don't manage your stars properly, then you can just auto lose as well. Next, we have Sindel Control. and this is going to be one of our first tier one decks that I have here. Sindel Control has one of the strongest things going for it is that it has arguably the best creature removal in the game in Gehenna. And the cool thing about Gehenna is that it plays around a lot of interactions. And Gehenna has been consistent based on the updated deck list. And so when it comes to taking control of a creature, that's one of the most powerful ways of removal, which is why for sale sign is almost treated as a staple. Because yes, you pay the stars, but you're taking control of the creature. You're not killing it, so they're not getting that killed ability. They're not, it's not on their board, so they can't protect it with certain activators. And it's not a body that they can rely on anymore. And so you get a lot of things out of a combiner that costs 0 stars. It just comes down to you having the two pieces in your hand, and with things like telepathic touch, the smaller end packages of like Droplet Squads, Wacko Man, and Thorgabork, allowing you to get a body to slow the game down and then draw into these different pieces that you need, is just super, super powerful. And then when you throw in the fact that you have Combine Harvester for 5 stars, which gives you an automatic revive of Gehenna, um, Forces of I'm not sorry, not Forces of Justice, but Soul Shroom, which allows you to revive Combine Harvester to get another copy. Next thing you know, you're looking at Gehenna being revived somewhere between 5 to 6 different times, and that could just really destroy your strategy. Uh, Also, something to note is that hidden within this control package is the Skelegas package. So you have Gehenna that's breaking through all your high level stuff by just snatching it off the field. And then you're like, okay, finally, I blew through all of these revivals of Gehenna. And the next thing you know, you have Gassed Queen combo coming down consistently. And that same Forces of Justice resource card that I talked about is the same card that's able to bring back Skelegas as well. And so the deck has like two different play styles. It can go control, or it could just step on the gas and have constant gas Gehenna coming down and just running you off the board. And the money you save with Gehenna, you're able to go 3 wide, which is 3 different battle zones, 3 different creature zones. Very consistently, you also slap in Zamrazed. And we're not even talking about other forms of removal excuse me, hidden within the deck, such as Charge Blaster, TFP. I think some decks are even sprinkling in like Abandonment and KO, so it could be a problem. The deck has pretty much everything you want. It's going to end up slightly towards the ender part of tier one for me as I put other decks in, because it's not the easiest deck to pilot, in my opinion. Your opening hands could be really, really bad, and you're kind of like, okay, how do I stall and slow the game until I can get into a favorable win con? Also, you don't want to slap your hand down just because you have it in your hand. You want to look at what's the most optimal targets based on the deck that you're playing against. Cool. All right, moving on. Next on, we have Teklar Midrange, which is actually a really good deck. There's an updated build now that has sprinkled in a few more creatures that are not Teklar, just to kind of cover some of the weaknesses within the deck. I'm going to talk about it first, and then I'll kind of place it where I think it belongs. Um, Actually, it might already be in the perfect spot. I think the decks in front of it do their game plan a little bit better and a little bit higher impact. Like it might be a little bit more consistent than Bugs, but I think Bugs will hit harder once it gets everything set up, and it could kind of steamroll a little bit more. Whereas the Teklar mid range is like, all right, you get a couple good combos off, you get a lot of good damage, but then it's kind of like, it kind of plateaus a little bit until you're able to ramp up into another combo. But safety cables is still one of the best removals in the game, shuffling the card back into your opponent's deck. Enderman's Telescope combined with the consistency of Teklar knowing what's on the top of his deck can get you a bunch of stars and a free combo that way. Talakon still needs to be respected as basically a double body with 400 power and 340 health. If you have a Teklar creature on the top of the deck, when it's killed, you can reveal that creature, add it to your hand, and Talakon is revived and stays on the field. So um, definitely not a deck to be slept on. And if you understand the nuances of the deck and you're a good pilot with it, which, shout out to my boy Harry Knight, who is the ambassador for Tekla Midrange right now. You can still get some good wins. Next, we have Gaios Midrange. I'm going to put it in front of Sindel Control. Giles Midrange has literally everything that you need, in my opinion. You have a mono planet, so you're playing around abandonment and all these other, different interactions. A mono planet that has a consistent engine based upon its planet, so I could pop my own creature to search for another creature of equal stars in my deck. So I'm deck thinning. I still have the Gook tree useful where I can draw two cards. Solo Mancer is even back because Blaze Elixir is off the list here. So a lot of lists are sprinkling in like one Guardian of the Moons and two Solo Mancer. Solo Mancer is also protected by Temple Traps. I made a whole video about this basically. The deck is insane in my opinion, and in the right hands, it could literally crush any best of one. Um, the issue is that you have to really be a good pilot. And so in terms of like easiness to pilot, like maybe Sendo Control, I don't know, they're kind of interchangeable. But Gaio's mid range in the right hands is still an incredible deck that needs to be respected. Next we have Sindel Tempo. Now, Sindel Tempo, and this is someone who loves the Sindel planet. I believe it is tier two. I think it can outshine the decks below it. Maybe we do something like this out of respect of like what Shias does. But um, and the reason I'm switching this too is that Sindel Tempo can still be difficult to pilot. You need to run two KOs. You need to run a lot of like tech cards to cover some of the deck's weaknesses. And so pardon me, building the proper list for Sindel Tempo is not the easy part. And that's what really makes the deck like rise or shine. It's like either you built it right and it can handle everything that you needed to do, or you did not build it right and then now you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do? What's my game plan? What's my win con? How do I get what I need to do done? However, um, this is one of the decks that's still able to consistently go triple wide and just run you off the board if you're not prepared. If they catch you at the right spot where everything's set up, and the deck is still fairly consistent with things like Bondbeak. When Bondbeak is killed, you can send one Sindel creature directly from your deck all the way to the grave. Usually you send Skelequeen, and then that for wherever you have your Skelegas in hand, now you have gas combo up. And then next thing you know, you're like, okay, you can get gas combo revived like 6+ times, I think, like almost like 5 to 7 different times because you have Bone Ladder. Some decks also have the FOJ package. So then this works with Forces of Justice. If you stretch it even further than that, you can also squeeze in a Soul Shroom. And so next thing you know, you're like, okay, these freaking zombies keep coming back like every turn. And a lot of decks can't deal with that, like economically or just putting creatures on the board. Another thing that makes it powerful too, and this is probably one of the things that might put it above Shias, in my opinion, is that during this format, a lot of decks do not have good recursion. So if you don't know, recursion is how can I bring back cards that were killed or use cards in my grave effectively. Um, a lot of these decks, like I said, like Giles Midrange, for example, is monoplanet, but it has like some recursion built into it with Noth, for example. Cystian of the Rose can also be part of that. So it already has that built in. But whereas a lot of these other decks were relying on things like Abomination Tomb. And since we do not have Abomination Tomb and even Phantom Matter anymore, as you can see here on the banned list, um, once their creatures are gone, they're pretty much always gone. And you get AOJ, which is still nice because you have the Combine Harvester. So that's why like I would kind of keep it above this. But I'm just thinking of decks like just straight up Shias aggro. Once those Shias creatures are dead, like that's pretty much it. And so Skelligas can have a better long game. And I think the format is going into a little bit of a long game right now. All right, that was a lot, but we're almost there. Next up, we have Crozen. So Crozen, I think, is still a tier one deck. There's just something that needs to be respected about consistently dropping down a 400 plus creature that can get some benefits when it's destroyed and having the draw engine attached to your moon. So if you have a moon such as like Crozen, where whenever two Pelisium creatures are killed, you draw a card, and that's on either player's turn, that could just spiral out of control. And you can look up and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm trading effectively. I'm getting rid of their big guys. And you look up and you're like, okay, they have 7 cards and I have 3 cards in my hand. Like, and the next thing you know, there's just nothing you can do. And then you're looking at like a Gobosaurus or a Great Serpent of the Falls or a Cranchon that's just been sitting on the field for like 2, 3 plus turns, and you're running out of resources. The biggest problem with the deck though is that um, Crozen being cut to 1 lowers the consistency. The deck feels very, very weaker when you don't have Crozen set up, but it feels extremely strong when you do have Crozen set up. And so it's kind of like coin flippy in a way, which I don't like, especially when you're talking about like a long tournament like Galaxy Madness and best of one format. It's like if I have a good hand and I get Crozen up early with like Helpo Belt or something, or if I just draw into it, I'm feeling great. But if Crozen and Helpo Belt is like at the bottom 10 of my deck and they have a way to clear off my couple big creatures, then I'm the one who's going to look up and have 2 or 3 cards in my hand. And that's not going to feel good because I have to either use a lot of my stars to play the big guys, or I'll use Pelisium, but I'm going like kind of like neg 2. I'm sending 2 of my smaller guys to the grave just to play 1 big guy. And if they clear it, then now I'm like, okay, what do I do next? And it's still a good potential for the deck to break. Um, with that being said, I don't think every deck always respects how high of health that these creatures have. And the fact that you can still have Jetpack, Leviathan's Crown, which is one of the best defensive activators in the game. You still have things like Planetary Field. So there's a lot of things that allow you to keep your creatures on the board. But compared to like the 2 decks in front of it, it could be pretty rough, as they're very consistent and they have good ways to just get rid of your big stuff. Next up, we have solo aggro, solo combo is probably the better way to describe this deck. Solo Mancer, basically, you just slap Solo Mancer in with some engine. I think you normally run Roka Planet, so you can have both of this Guardians. And then the main objective is get Solo Mancer on the field with Blaze Elixir and hit them in the face for 10 points and find a creative way to get the other 10 points. um, as a deck by itself, I could put it at the top of tier 3 right now. Feel free to comment below if you know how do you feel about that. But I think what you want out of solo combo, you kind of already get in Gaios, and probably a little bit more consistently because you have ways to search Solo Master on command. You can run things like Universe Boundary or Card Consuming Cosmic Creator to send your Guardian of the Moon from your deck or from your hand to the grave, and then now your combo is fully set up in the Gaios thing. Whereas this is kind of like I need to get use out of the Guardians, wait for my opponent to kill them, and then I kind of follow up with some form of damage after the fact. And it's like at that point, I almost can kind of put it in not a good idea. um, yeah, let's just drop it in. Well, I don't know. It could go in not a good idea just because it's like you might as well at that point just run Gaius mid range. Next up, we have Shape Knights. You might be seeing like 2 Syndian S things. This is because these are 2 different builds, and I'll describe that very quickly. This is just pure Shape Knights, and I'm going to put that in not a good idea. Pure Shape Knights in the form that it used to run, which is basically like um, get Lionel in the grave, get Scorn in my hand, get Hexator in my hand, and then use all the other cards around it to blow up the field and just swing for a bunch of damage. Whether that's Scorn popping a card and then I slam down Hexator, or using like TFP or whatever the case may be to get a bunch of phase damage, and then scaling that up with the Arena, which is going to add 2 more stars to every Shape Knight, increasing their power. The issue about that is that the deck got hit so hard in terms of Arctorius being gone, Scoring being cut to 1. Yes, you have 2 Hexator, but you only have 1 Trong. And so if you ever have a situation, pardon me, if you ever have a situation where either you draw 2 Lionel, or you have a situation where Tron can't even search for a Hexator or a Scorn because you don't have enough materials of the other type, it can feel really, really bad. And I think the deck functions much, much better as an engine, which is why I'm going to go into this next deck, which is Utopa Syndian, which I think is the best way to run Syndian right now. In my opinion, the deck is absolutely nuts. It requires a really, really good pilot, and so that's probably why I'll probably bump it down like this. Like you really have to know what you're doing with the deck, but once you get everything set up, it can really, really snowball. This is one of the most broken moons, in my opinion. That is very, very underrated. This moon says if you have a sentient creature on the field, free play any sentient creature from your hand that has less stars than that creature, and for the rest of your turn, it's unaffected by activators. That is entirely nuts. And especially when you pair that with like slapping in this Shape Knight engine where you have the arena set up, now you can have a Hexator that gets up to 8 stars or 10 stars in value. And you're free playing things like Young Galleon, Stalius, Zenshi, the assigner, and now it just starts to spiral out of control. And another thing you have to realize is that the Scindian planet is also attached to this moon. So when it comes to battling, you are forced to fight the biggest creature first. And so there's just situations where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even attack. Like if it's the big creature, do I have a way to clear it? If not, I can't even get rid of the smaller creature that's also annoying. Like it could be a scorn that sits there and once per turn is just popping one creature on your field because it has 40 health, but it's being shielded by like a Yangalian or a Zenshi or a Stalius, for example. And not to mention Stalius being nuts in itself, where if you play that, that pretty much unlocks every other card in your deck that's able to come down. And I mean, the deck has a lot of space for like unique type of cards. I've even seen some builds that run Spear, for example, where it gains, it sits there and it gains power and health every time a creature is cosplayed, but its health is 40/40. And so if it's hiding behind a bigger Scindian creature, next thing you know, like you're trying to play more and more creatures down to clear that Young Galleon, for example, and it's just growing in power. And then next thing you know, now that's the biggest creature on the field, and then it can follow up with another creature. And so in the right hands, the deck can absolutely be nuts. Um, yeah, I think the only issue is that sometimes it's a little awkward to set up. Um, Sometimes your draw power can be a little bit awkward. And like I said, it takes a good pilot because you have to know when is it time to kind of like slow the game down and when is it time to step on the gas. But in terms of just raw power and a moon that could really go a long way, and the moon hasn't been hit, I think it could really, really dominate. Last but not least, we have Zemius. Now, Zemius is actually is back. If you are a Zemius fan, I think it is a good opportunity for you to pick up the deck. I think the deck is very easy to pilot. I would put it something like this. Um, yeah, I think that actually kind of looks pretty good. And one of these decks might jump up to tier one here. Um, or even if it stays like this, I'm pretty happy with this. But the reason Zemius is really, really good is that the format, excuse me, has slowed down significantly. You don't have the Tower plus Chakra shuffling cards back into the deck, which was the bane of Zemius's existence, because you finally go 60% of the game getting all your planet types set up in the grave just for them to shuffle Zemius back into the deck. And so now you have to pile through the deck and like find it, then cosplay it and do all of that. And against certain decks, especially Shias, it's already far too late. You're already getting blown off the field and they're already getting to 20 points significantly faster. But with the deck, with the format slowing down significantly, now the deck can just play that long grind game. I've seen some builds that even run Gallifection where they don't mind killing one creature from the top of their deck, but can you survive that? And so you're losing a lot of your tech. Excuse me, you're losing a lot of your tech. You're losing a lot of um, different options in order to survive the game and even break through a Zemius. And if it's set up early and it comes faster than you think, now you're dealing with a 440 once per turn, and it could really get out of control. Next thing you know, they're able to go triple wide. You're looking at two different Zemiuses now. Then it can throw on a third creature, and you just run out of defense. Um, Definitely needs to be respected. The thing that hinders the deck a little bit, though, is that it does take some time to set up, and people who understand how the deck works will let you sit on weaker creatures. It relies on the cheaper creatures that just represent each planet. You know, your Thoringer boards, Droplet Squads, for example. A good player will sit there and make you draw most of your deck and then kill those two creatures. And now you only have two planets ready to go. So they slow down the progression of when Xemius is ready. And now the game state is significantly different because now you don't have that time to trade because you have the candle burning from both ends of the stick, which is um, I still need to set up Xemius, so I need to trade my creatures or get them in the grave somehow. But also, I don't have a lot of cards left in my deck. And next thing you know, they're going to be gaining 1 point per turn. And so that's a really big weakness, and people who understand that can really take advantage of that against Emius. But overall, I think this is the tier list. If I had to make any changes here, I think Gaio's mid range, in terms of all the criteria I listed, is still uh, probably the top. It is kind of difficult to pilot, but for the power level, you have a better chance running this compared to these two. AOJ is very easy to pilot. However, it can definitely um, uh, it could fall off with a misplay, and there's ways to like break through the deck too. Um, and so like the power level is a little bit lower, but it is way more consistent. So something like this, I think, is what I would be happy with ultimately. But yeah, that's enough yapping for now. This is Chrono Knight back here with another video. Hope you guys like, comment, and subscribe below. Let me know if you like this style of video, if there's anything else you want to see. A shout out to everyone who's participating in Galaxy Madness right now, including myself, as the tournament is currently underway. Good luck, have fun, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.